So today we're going to learn how to use the treble clef and how to read it and how to cheat using colors as a guide. So at Margaret Murray School, I run this thing called the music karate system. And so basically what we're doing today is the skills that the kids working on their white, which is the first one, that's like kindergarten where you start, and yellow belts would work on. Because for the first couple years of reading music, I have kids playing music that looks a lot like this. So it's got colors to help. So we're going to talk about it. So the very first instrument that the kids ever play with me is something called boom markers. And what these are is they're one note at a time. So when you've got something like a piano, it's got all the notes, right? Unless you really know what you're doing, it's just kind of like you don't know where to start. So the middle C on the piano is what this is. So red is C, orange is D, E is yellow, F is light green, G is dark green, A is purple, B is pink. And so I start with colors for a couple reasons. One of which is a lot of times kindergartens come in not even knowing their letters, let alone music letters. And it's just easier. And with the exception of colorblind students, it is something that everyone can usually succeed at. And so what we start with actually even before we look at music that looks like this, with lines and spaces and treble clefs, is I'll start with some YouTube videos or me putting music that looks like this with the different colors on the board, or me just writing patterns. And we actually just practice tracking left to right, one at a time, playing at the same time, because these themselves are big skills, and following along. And so what we grow into is the ability to, as we learn the note names, we're also learning our rhythms, follow along with music. And so by the time students have received their yellow belt in music, they're able to fully read a piece of music, but instead of actually looking at the lines and spaces like they would for the higher grades and to actually read music legit, they're cheating using the colors. So that's the process that I'm going to explain. So again, the system I use is based on those plastic boom markers, and that's where we start. But I've actually colored a lot of instruments like the pianos and the xylophones and stuff in my room to follow the same system. I spray painted my handbells, and even with some students that struggle in the band program, I'll even color code their music up until grade 6. So it's something that we start with in kindergarten, we try and grow out of, but it's a crutch that some students need for a while, and that's okay. And so again, basically, real music is on a series of lines and spaces. And if you're a real musician reading real music, you'd eventually have black and white music, and you just have to know from the lines and spaces what note you're supposed to play. And so the colors just help the eye track. And so anything on this bottom line under the treble clef is a C. Anything that's here is a D. The first line's an E, F, G is the second line, A is the second space, B, C. So this little cheat sheet only has some of the lines and spaces covered, but you can kind of see that. Now in European countries or singers, they'll often use something called solfege, fixed do. So if you're familiar with what that system is, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. It's just a different way of saying the same thing. So let's go through and practice this. So in the very beginning, like I said, I would have kids just following colors. And then I would start drilling them. And so I'd have these things. So we would say, okay, what is this? Well, it's a yellow, so it's E, and they'll learn that really quick. But then I'll say, okay, but now let's look. So if it's on the first line, it's an E, and that's a low E. And if it's on that top space, it's a high E. And we start talking about how there's more than one note. So the next instrument we do, and this is where we're heading next, is the xylophone. So the xylophones I have, they're like a chunk of the piano. And so what I've done is I just took all my xylophones and I colored them, because why not? It's for kids. Now I've lost my whacking stick. There it is. And so the xylophones go from C, like a low C, And you'll notice they have another C up to an high A. And so these notes are basically what the right hand of a piano player would do, or they're the average range of like a recorder, a ukulele. They're the range of most children's singing voices until their voices break. So biological boys, when the testosterone starts ramping up at puberty, their voice will drop. That typically happens as early as the end of grade 4, but usually about grade 6. So until then, all students, their singing voices fall in this range. And so that's why these classroom instruments have it. So they come without the colors, but I put the colors on it. So as the kids are learning to read music, they have this as a crutch. So each one of these lines and spaces is represented here. So an E that's low would be this E. An E, for example, that's high would be this E that's higher. And of course the sun had to come out at the worst time. There you go, you can kind of see. And so that sort of transition us. And so let's kind of look at it in order left to right. So basically the way music works is the lower the note on the lines and spaces, the lower the sound, and the higher the note, the higher the sound. So pretty straightforward actually. So let's just put these in order and then let's go through them. Alright, so I had these in order of pairs because one of the exercises I'll do with the kids is I will have them differentiate between the high and the low. So this C, so I have it red, and what we're trying to get to as we level up is that anything that's under the treble clef like this is a C. And on our xylophone, it's going to make this sound here. So this would be D. So it's orange to help us, but that's our low D.
JJ, could you go to bathroom 204 and check the middle stall for us? Thank you.
This is an E, first line of the treble clef. It's a lower sound. F, first space of the treble clef. G, second line of the treble clef. A, second space of the treble clef. B, middle line of the treble clef. C, third space of the treble clef. And so notice that that's the high C. D, fourth space of the treble clef. E, top space of the treble clef. F, top line of the treble clef. G, right above the treble clef. And A, right on top of the treble clef with a line. And that's this top one. Now, of course, there are more notes, lower and higher. The lower notes that are on the piano, typically played with the left hand, those are something called the bass clef. So you'll notice that there's this kind of funny thing in front of all these pictures. That's what I mean by the treble clef. When you see something that's shaped a bit different, like with a curve, that's called a bass clef. Now, we don't use the bass clef in elementary because it isn't until about, like I said, grade 6 where most biological males, their voices will drop. So the children don't produce bass notes on their own naturally anyways. So it isn't until grade 6 band when both you have boys in your class, biological boys in your class, that are able to produce those notes with their body. or they're playing low instruments like the trombone, the tuba, that we really start talking about the bass clef. So we're just kind of talking about the high notes today. And there are higher than that high notes, but that's getting into like dog whistle territory, and we don't need them that high. And some children are capable of making those very high-pitched noises, but few of us really want to hear it. So as the kids go on, we start playing songs. So we're just going to look at Old Macdonald, okay? So how I'd have them decode it when they were young is we would just look at the colors. And again, just that idea of left to right. And we'd start with songs like this, like Old Macdonald, that they've heard before. Old Macdonald had a farm, right? We know how it goes. So we would say, okay, it is dark green, dark green, dark green, orange, yellow, yellow, orange. Oops, sorry, I can't do this upside down. Right? And so then the next step would be like, okay guys, what letter is this? And that would be when they're starting to attach the line in the space to a letter and attach the color to the letter. So we would do drills and we'd go through, okay, what's this? High A, high G, high F, high E, high D, high C, B, A, G, F, E, low E, low D, low C. And we do them out of order and practice them lots. And so then we'd look at it in terms of letters and we'd say, okay, beginning of Old Macdonald, G, 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 D, E, E, D, and then we'd play it. So if you're looking at the letters, G, 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 D, E, E, D. And then what I'd have kids start to experiment with is I'd give them xylophones without the colors written on it. So still the letters, still the crutch of the letter, but without the colors written on it. The next step would be to drill and to start to really get those lines and spaces. So trying to not just look at the color, trying to do the lines and spaces. And so that's where I'd give kids homework like this, cover the name, where, okay, we're starting to still using the lines and spaces, but maybe cheating with the colors a bit, write it in. And so that's basically what the white and the yellow belt would be. It would be starting completely with colors and then showing them the notes on the treble clef, but with colors and letters to help guide them, and the music would look like this. So we do this for lots of songs and we get lots of practice over a period of time. And once a child can get a piece of music like this, here we'll flip to the other side, there's a hole in the bucket, and on their own figure out how to play it just using the colors and the letters, that tells me that they're ready for the next step, which will be another video, of being able to read the treble clef without the colors to cheat. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that helps everyone out there working on learning to read the treble clef. Have a great day. See you soon.